Interior family car, Lake Road, afternoon. Scott sits in the back seat, watching across Eric as they pass the line of cottages. Scott sits up, leaning over Eric.
Hey, watch it.
They pass the Palmer cottage. Scott shifts to watch as it passes behind them. Exterior Freeman cottage, afternoon. The Freeman car pulls in. Everyone gets out. Angle on Scott. He looks to where David had waited for him the year before. Angle on the area, obviously empty. Angle on Scott. He goes and helps unload the car. Interior Freeman cottage, Scott and Eric's bedroom, afternoon. Scott unpacks his suitcase, placing clothes into the dresser. He closes the suitcase and places it on the floor. Exterior Freeman cottage, afternoon. Scott comes out the front and goes to the road. He stands, looking down the road toward the Palmer cottage, confused, uncertain. Finally, he decides and starts quickly down the road. Exterior Palmer cottage, lakeside, enclosed porch, afternoon. Scott goes to the door of the enclosed porch and knocks. David answers.
What's going on? I can't talk right now. I sent you 5 letters. You didn't write back. You said you would. I have to go. My mom wants me to do something for her. I have to go. Bye.
David closes the door and goes into the cottage.
David!
Kathy comes from the back and passes Scott as she goes inside.
I guess you really don't have a girlfriend, do you?
She goes in. Scott, bewildered and hurt, leaves. Exterior lake canoe, afternoon. Tom and Linda paddle the canoe. Scott sits in the middle. They have just come across the lake and travel the shore to their cottage. As they near the Palmer cottage, Scott sees David fishing off the dock. Scott becomes restless. Tom shows a little concern as he steadies the canoe.
David!
Scott, settle down. You're rocking the boat, buddy.
David!
David looks up, then back to fishing.
David, what did I do?
Seriously, Scott, settle down or you'll flip us. David grabs his stuff and starts for the cottage. Tom reaches forward, grabs Scott, and forces him to sit. Scott settles into the middle, lost, confused, hurt. Tom and Linda continue to paddle. Interior, small general store, afternoon. Scott goes to the counter and pays for candy and a soda. Exterior, small general store, afternoon. Scott comes out of the store and heads down the road. Exterior, Lake Road, afternoon. Scott walks the road. He slows as he passes the Palmer cottage, probing the windows. Exterior, Freeman cottage, dock, late afternoon. Scott sits in a chair on the dock, occasionally glancing down to the Palmer dock. We hear commotion from the yard. Angle on yard. Linda and Tom are welcoming Uncle Bob. Exterior, Freeman cottage, lakeside, afternoon.
Just set everything on the table, Pop.
Linda and Uncle Bob hug. Uncle Bob notices Scott on the dock.
Wow, where's David? I figured those two would be inseparable this summer.
He notices Linda's concern as she looks to Scott.
What's wrong?
I'll tell you later. Just don't ask him about David.
She starts for the dock. Exterior, Freeman cottage, dock, afternoon. Linda comes up behind Scott.
Hey, your Uncle Bob's here. Why don't you come and sit with us?
Scott nods and gets up. Exterior, Freeman cottage, back porch, evening. Eric and Sue are in the swing, Eric's arm around her. They start kissing. Scott comes around the side of the cottage and stops when he sees them. He watches. Angle on Eric and Sue. Eric realizes they're being watched.
What do you want? Hello? Go away, Scott.
Scott looks to Eric. Angry determination. He starts to the front of the cottage. Exterior, Palmer cottage, dock, evening. David is on the dock fishing. Scott comes into the yard from the front, angry stride to the dock. He stops, pause.
What the fuck?
David, startled, turns. At first, he seems like a trapped animal, looking for a way around Scott. He then becomes angry, never looking directly at Scott.
Go away! Why?
We see a flash of pain in David's face, then back to anger.
I don't like you. I don't like you, Scott.
David wants Scott to move, but Scott is not about to move.
That's not true. I don't like you. Go away!
David uses the anger to bump past Scott and run for the cottage. Scott stands in shock and despair. Angle on cottage. David slams through the door. We see Lynn standing at the screen window on the porch. She looks back to David as he comes in, then back to Scott. Her heart is breaking. Exterior Palmer Cottage evening. Scott comes from the back. He is numb, walking toward his cottage. Exterior Freeman Cottage, late evening. Scott stops in the road in front of the cottage. Angle on Scott from a short ways down the road. Scott looks at the cottage, then turns and looks at the hill. He turns back to the cottage. After a moment, he disappears into the tree line, starting up the hill. Exterior, main road around the lake, late evening. Scott emerges from the trees and stops at the edge of the road. He looks in both directions, then stares across. After a moment, he walks out to the middle of the road. He again looks up and down the road to where it disappears into the dusk of the waning sunlight. Angle on Scott. He faces down the road. He closes his eyes and stretches his arms out to either side. Shot slowly pulls in on Scott. Tears leak from his closed eyes, his breath heavy and labored. Once the shot is tight on his face, we see a flash of light. Scott opens his eyes, startled.
Hey, kid! What the hell you doing?
Angle on car from behind Scott. Scott is silhouetted against the headlights. The driver gets out.
You okay? Where do you belong?
Angle on Scott. He looks around as if waking up. He then turns and starts back into the woods. The driver watches him.
You all right? Oh, strange kid.
Exterior Freeman Cottage, back porch night. Scott sits in the swing on the back porch, watching Tom, Linda, and Eric by the fire. Kathy appears slowly from around the side of the cottage.
Scott! Cassie?
Scott gets up, steps off the porch, and goes to Kathy.
I'm not supposed to say this. I promise. What? Something happened, Scott. Something bad. What happened? I can't. I'm sorry. I promise. I just want you to know it's not you. I have to go.
Kathy disappears into the shadows. Scott stares off at her, still confused, but his hurt has become determination. Interior, small general store, afternoon. Lynn goes to the counter with a few necessities. Uncle Bob comes in, looks around, sees Lynn. Angle on Lynn. She takes the bag from the counter and turns to leave.
Hi. Oh, hi, Mama. I'm going to admit that I'm at a disadvantage. What do you mean? I don't know your name. Oh, Lynn. My name's Lynn. Well, it was nice seeing you again, Lynn. You too. Take care.
Uncle Bob watches her leave, thinking. Exterior, small general store, afternoon. Lynn walks away from the steps as Uncle Bob comes out.
Lynn!
Lynn stops and turns as Uncle Bob catches up.
I really don't know if this is my place, but... Is everything okay with David?
Lynn looks away.
Scott's miserable, and quite honestly, after seeing them last summer, it just doesn't make sense.
Lynn reveals a sad, frustrated hurt.
It's hard when not raising kids, especially by myself. You're worried that that's safe. David told me about him and Scott. I don't care. He's my son. I love him. Some boys. They put him in the hospital. They beat him so bad that they had to take him to the hospital. He was with me for a week. When he came out, he wasn't the same. He saw a therapist for 3 months. I don't think it helped.
I'm so sorry.
Me too. He loves Scott so much and she slowly stopped us.
Exterior Freeman Cottage, lakeside, evening. The sun sets behind the hill. Scott sits in the lawn chair, staring off over the lake. Interior Palmer Cottage, enclosed porch, evening. David and Kathy sit on the porch. David is drawing, Kathy is reading. A strong knock at the door. David answers. Angle on opening door. We see Scott. A moment's pause as they look at each other.
I can't talk right now.
David goes to close the door. Scott forces his way in. Kathy gets up, wide-eyed. Scott and David look at each other.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, David. It doesn't matter what happened. Scott, I have a girlfriend.
Lynn steps out from the cottage.
You have a boyfriend. I'm not gay, Scott. Don't be gay. Just be with me.
Lynn steps in between, motioning David into the cottage. She goes to Scott.
I'm sorry. You should go, Scott.
Interior Freeman Cottage kitchen night. Tom and Linda sit at the table. Scott comes in.
Hey, have you got your stuff packed? We're leaving tomorrow.
Scott looks at Linda and Tom a moment, then goes for the back door. Exterior Freeman Cottage, lakeside night. Scott comes off the deck, through the yard to the dock. He is angry, hurt. He comes on a lawn chair, grabs it, and throws it as far as he can, letting out a cry as he does. He continues on to the dock. Exterior Freeman Cottage dock night. Scott stops at the end and looks down towards the Palmer Cottage. Angle towards Palmer Cottage. The shadowy figure of a boy stands on the end of the dock. Interior Freeman Cottage kitchen night. Linda and Tom hear Scott. Linda and Tom look at each other.
I'll go.
Tom gets up. Exterior Freeman Cottage dock night. Scott is facing the Palmer Cottage. Scott is at the end of his desperation, not knowing what else to do. Exterior Palmer Cottage, lakeside dock night. Close on David. He stands, hearing Scott. He is tortured, hurt, crying. He turns and starts for the cottage. Exterior Freeman Cottage dock night. Angle on Palmer dock. David walks the dock towards the shore and disappears into the shadows of the yard. Close on Scott. Despair. Angle on Tom. He comes onto the dock. Linda is in the background, just off the deck.
Scott. Come on, Scott. Let's go inside.
Tom puts his hand on Scott's shoulder. Scott looks one more time to the Palmer dock, then turns and goes with Tom. Exterior Freeman Cottage afternoon. The Freeman family finishes packing the car and get in. Interior family car afternoon. Scott sits in the back, sullen. As they approach the Palmer cottage, he sees the ambulance. 2 paramedics transport David on a gurney from the cottage. Scott becomes overwhelmed.
Stop!
Scott opens the door as the car slows, jumps out and runs to Lynn. Exterior Palmer cottage afternoon. Scott runs up to Lynn. He stops, desperate, questioning with his eyes.
What happened? Is he okay?
Lynn places her hand on the side of his face, hard to speak.
He cares so much about me.
She is overwhelmed in shock.
He tried to kill himself, Scott.
No. Is he?
No,
Is he going to be all right?
I don't know.
The ambulance leaves. Exterior Freeman car afternoon. Everyone is out of the car. Scott approaches, going to Linda. She puts her arms around him as Lynn and Kathy get into their car and follow. Interior family car afternoon. Eric is in the front seat, turned to be able to see forward and back. Linda sits in the back with Scott. Tom continually glances into the rearview mirror. Scott sits in Linda's embrace, tears streaming. Fade to black. Interior Freeman home, dining room, evening, late summer. The Freeman family eats dinner. Scott is noticeably quiet and withdrawn.
Sue called earlier. Thanks, Mom. She wants to get ice cream later.
Excited about being a senior?
That's right. You boys will be in the same school this year. You excited?
Scott glances up and nods. Linda and Tom share a look.
Yeah, I'll show him around. Show him how it's done. I'm finished.
Scott gets up. Cut 2. Interior Freeman home, Scott's bedroom, evening. Scott lays in bed, staring at the ceiling. Linda comes in.
Hey, can I come in?
Yeah.
She goes to the bed and sits.
So, you get to explore a brand new school. And you have that computer class. That should be a lot of fun.
Scott nods. Linda wants to make it all go away for him. She puts her hand on his face, turning his head to look at her.
It gets better, Scott. Get some sleep.
We see distress surface in his face. Interior Freeman home, Scott's bedroom, night. Scott lays in bed, staring at the heart shrine on the inside of the closet door. After a moment, he gets out of bed and goes to it. He starts to take it off, but stops. Pause. He then slowly closes the door. He leans on it, his face turned. Angle across the face of the door. Scott, eyes closed, runs his fingers across the door's surface. Fade to black. Interior, classroom, day. Scott sits in his computer class, taking notes, attentive. Exterior park, open field, day. Following early spring. Jim, Tony, Mike, Scott, and 2 other boys are playing 3-on-3 football. Scott, Mike, and boy 1 are on defense against Jim, Tony, and boy 2. Jim, quarterback, hikes the ball.
1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7. He's thrown to Tony. I got him. Kissed any boys lately? No. Just staring at your ass.
Mike comes up to Scott.
Hey, Scott. I hear that Sean Miller might be gay. Just so you know.
Scott has a moment, like sudden remember. His attitude darkens.
Happy birthday, dear Scott.
Interior Freeman home, living room, day.
Happy
Scott is on his
birthday
knees in front of the coffee table, on which sits the birthday cake. Everyone finishes singing. Scott, without enthusiasm, yet committedly blows out the candles. As Linda begins to cut the cake, noting Scott, Scott gets up and goes into the foyer. Interior Freeman home, foyer, day. Scott comes in and stands as if not remembering where he was going. After a moment, he sits on the steps, looking at the front door. Exterior Freeman home, day. Scott comes out the front door and sits on the steps. He looks blankly around the neighborhood. Linda comes out carrying a wrapped present. Linda sits next to him, placing the present on his lap.
Aren't you going to open your presents?
Scott looks at the gift, then to Linda. He carefully unwraps the box, pulling the paper off the face. We see it is the computer he was wanting. His eyes smile slightly. He runs his fingers over the image.
I don't want to go back, Mom.
Linda puts her arm around him. Scott continues tracing the image of the computer.
What if he stopped there?
Linda pulls him closer, stroking his hair. Crossfade. Interior, family car, afternoon. Scott sits in the back seat, blankly staring out the window at the passing landscape. I just want love. Exterior Freeman Cottage, afternoon. The family car pulls in, close on Scott as he gets out of the car, looking at the cottage. He steps into the yard, angle on yard, flashback, Scott arriving at the lake, running and embracing David, back to present. Exterior Freeman Cottage, lakeside, afternoon. Scott walks, solemn. He goes for the dock. Exterior Freeman Cottage, dock, afternoon. Scott looks off over the lake. Flashback. David in the chair drawing Scott on the lounge. Back to present. Scott then brings himself to look to the Palmer dock. Angle on empty dock. Exterior Palmer Cottage, lakeside afternoon. Scott comes into the back area. The cottage is closed up. Angle on Palmer boat. The boat is raised out of the water with the cover still on it. Exterior Palmer Cottage dock, afternoon. Scott sits at the end of the dock, numb. Flashback, David and Scott fishing off the dock. Back to present. Scott looks over the lake. Slowly it begins to dawn on him. The realization that he may never see David again. His face showing the rising despair. Just as he's about to break down. Scott, startled, turns to look. He sees David. His emotions come to the surface. He scrambles to his feet, runs to David and throws his arms around him. Both boys are crying.
I'm sorry I scared you.
Just
You didn't scare me.
I just want.
All right, you did.
I just wanna love you. Exterior, Freeman Cottage, lakeside night. Close on Scott and David. They sit in a chair, entwined with each other in front of the fire.
I told my mom. I told her about us. She was okay with it. So I told my best friend and he didn't care. He was so great. But somehow everyone found out. Some boys stopped me in the park. They beat me up. Called me faggot. They punched me, they kicked me, they spit on me. They told me I was disgusting. They had to take me to the hospital. I just didn't want to be gay anymore. I was so afraid. They were just so mean to me. I'm sorry. I know. Don't be sorry, David. Just be happy, okay?
David smiles and nods. Angle on Eric and Sue. Eric watches the fire. Sue is watching Scott and David.
That's so sweet. Really? Those two? Eric.
Scott, once Eric is watching, kisses David. Both Scott and David then look to Eric with puppy dog faces.
Aren't we so sweet?
Angle on Eric. He just shakes his head.
Maybe you should try being gay. You could be sweet too.
Not a chance.
What?
Are you trying to get rid of me?
Not a chance.
She kisses him. Shot slowly pulls back. We begin to see the full activity around the fire pit. Along with Scott, David, Eric, and Sue, we see Tom and Linda and Kathy and Lynn. Everyone is talking, laughing, the fire popping. Fade to black. Credits roll.
I see the crystal raindrops fall, and the beauty of it all is when the sun comes shining through to make those rainbows in my mind. When I think of you sometime, and I want to spend some time with you, just the two of us.